Hello, I'm Chrissy Seaton. Welcome to the first video in the Genesis series. Now, this series of videos is aimed to concentrate on parts of the Torah that are actually relevant to Gentiles. That means relevant for us to know and to understand. And it's also important to mention at this point in time that there are layers of learning, and we know that from just life learning and school, etc. In order to have a firm grasp on the concepts of mathematics, one has to understand the very basic fundamentals of mathematics first, and that begins with learning our tables and multiplications, additions, divisions, all those things we had to learn as young children. So there are layers to learning mathematics, just as there are layers to learning and understanding the complete Tanakh, which includes the Torah. So that's what we're going to commence on. I'm sorry, my little dog is trying to play with the bird, so there's a little bit of communication going on between them. I apologise, but they are part of God's creation, so they have rights. So with this layers of learning, we are going to go through those basic fundamental things. Now, what a lot of people do is they make the mistake of or deciding they want to learn something particular, but then they go and they learn a bit from here, a bit from there, somebody else's opinion, perhaps explanations. Some of them are a bit left of centre, and so they end up with a sort of a conglomeration of information that is confusing at times, and or may be leading them down an incorrect pathway of understanding. So it is my intention that we will focus in the Genesis series on those basic fundamentals and explanations regarding them. So where appropriate, I will have some printed notes available for you, and they will be available to either cut and paste or freely download on my website, that's mynoahhydefamily.com, and there will be a special document page. So you just click on the document page, select the appropriate document, and then you can either read it online or you can print yourself off a copy if you wish to. So, and on those notes, there will also be contained reference material. That means information for that particular lesson that I have drawn from or used as examples, or I may even include some additional reading that may be beneficial for you to follow up on in addition to the video. Now, the information I do give you, I just want to make this very clear. I guess in a way I'm making a disclaimer that all the information that I will impart to you during this series of videos, I have sourced that information from either the Tanakh, or Torah, or reliable sources such as Chabad.org website, and there may be some books I have sourced for information, but all those sources I will reference so that you, in turn, may freely go and look those things up for yourself. So what I'm trying to assure you is that the information that I'm imparting is not just my opinion. I am not just pulling things out of the air to describe something. So I hope that is reassuring to you. Now, just to mention to you, I draw largely on my Tanakh, which is a Stones edition, Art Scroll series, and of course the Humash, which is Torah, and that is also the Stone edition Art Scroll series. And those are listed in a set of notes for today's video, which you can access on my website, as I explained before. And I'll also leave a link in the description box for that. So, having said all that, let's begin our series, and we're going to concentrate. This whole series, the Genesis series at the moment, is going to concentrate on Genesis chapter 1, and that is going to be verses 26 to 30. Now, also included on the notes on the document page of my website, there is a list of the readings and the chapters and the verse references that are essential for Noahides or all of Gentiles to understand in relation to the book of Genesis. Now, that doesn't mean to say you can't read and understand the whole lot of Genesis. Please don't misunderstand me. But it is most important that Gentiles understand, study and know this very well, because this is sort of that first layer. So in other words, you can't kind of continue on to another layer until you've learned that foundational layer, because what this does is it dispels any confusion or misconceptions that you may have developed in the past or have now. So let's get on with it, and I'm going to begin by reading verse 26, and it says, verse 26, this is Genesis chapter 1. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. They shall rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and over the animal, the whole earth, and every creeping thing that creeps upon earth." So that is verse 26. Now, let's have a little look and tease that apart. Now, the term "let us make man in our own image," now that creates a confusion for a lot of people. They're thinking this is a collaborative effort by a group of entities that have created man. So now I'm going to read, attached to this verse is a expanded commentary that will explain that. And rather than me try to transcribe it and put it in my own words, I'm reading directly to you the biblical commentary just relating to verse 26. And remember, the number of words in verse 26 are a lot less than what is in the commentary, and that is an illustration of the layers of learning, the layers of understanding, the layers of explanations. So now I'm going to read the biblical commentary from the Stones Edition Art Scroll series. So verse 26, "Let us make man." This preamble indicates that man was created with great deliberation and wisdom. God did not say, "Let the earth bring forth," as he did with other creatures. Instead, man was brought into being with the deepest involvement of divine providence and wisdom. Now, Targum Yonason paraphrases, "And God said to the ministering angels who had been created on the second day of creation of the world, 'Let us make man.'" When Moses wrote the Torah and came to this verse, "Let us make," which is in the plural and implies that there is more than one creator, he said, "Sovereign of the universe, why do you thus furnish a pretext for heretics to maintain that there is a plurality of divinities?" Very important, that. Right. God replied, "Whoever wishes to err will err. Instead, let them learn from their Creator who created all." Yet when he came to create man, he took counsel with the ministering angels. Thus God taught that one should always consult others before embarking upon major new initiatives. And he was not deterred by the possibility that some might choose to find a sacrilegious implication in the verse. The implications of God's response, whoever wishes to err, is that one who sincerely seeks the truth will see it. One who looks for an excuse to blaspheme will find it. In our image, i.e. in our mould, Rashi explains, meaning that God had prepared the mould in which he would now shape man, after our likeness, with the power of understanding and intellect. Now, can you see how much explanation and clarification there was in that commentary of that one verse? Now, further to that, I want to add another piece of information that may broaden a bit more understanding. Now, this comes, I'm reading this from the Torah Anthology, and this is just on Genesis 1, so you can see there's a lot of information. However, I am again just going to concentrate on this first verse, 26. So the Torah Anthology, I've referenced this incidentally in the publication, etc., on the documents page on the website. Another reason the Torah uses the expression, let us make man, is because the angels had become very proud. They're a little bit haughty, in other words. When God created the birds and fish on the fifth day, the angels said, we are better than they are. So in order to deflate their pride, God said, let us make man. What he was saying was, let each of us make a man and let us see who is truly great. Now, God wanted to show the angels that they have no reason to be proud, since they cannot create anything. The very next verse goes on to say, and God created man. So the first phrase was, let us make man, meaning the challenge was thrown out to the angels as well. Let us all try to make a man and see who is successful. But then, following that, it says then it goes on and says, and God created man. So that's the answer to the first, isn't it? So it was only God who was able to create man, which indicates that the angels were not able to create anything. So there's another layer. Remember, I'm talking about layers of learning? There's another layer. This also explains why the fish and birds were created on the fifth day and not on the sixth with the other animals. It could be said that anything created earlier was more important. Or, conversely, that the most important things were created at the end. God, therefore, created fish and fowl on the fifth day and then created the angels. Then on the sixth day, God created the other animals. If all were created on the same day, the angels would have been able to argue that they were most important. But since some angels were created on the but since some animals were created on the fifth day before the angels, and others were created on the sixth, the angels have no argument for their importance. In either case, they are inferior. So that is another layer, as I said, of understanding, which makes perfect sense when it is read in the context of the actual verse and the biblical commentaries that I have previously read. So we are at that point where now we say that those who want to misinterpret anything in the Bible, including the creation of man, they're going to find a way to be obnoxious or to disagree or to err in their understanding. People will do that. They'll make a choice or they'll find a reason. But the one like yourselves who is trying to learn and understand the fundamentals of all this and the layers, then you are doing what God wants. You're striving to be aware and have knowledge of God's plans and also in your service to God. So you are going to be rewarded. Now, let us also understand that man was very important to God. And man has power over all the other things that God has created. So man is I guess, a really significant, I don't want to say element, a really significant pivotal point of creation. And the universe and all other things were created for the sake of man, to be in receipt of the benefits of it, to take care of it, to honour it by serving God, etc. So that sort of is a nutshell, a large nutshell perhaps, of verse 26 of Genesis chapter 1. So again, as I said, I will have that note on the document page. There'll be a list of notes there referring to this video that I'm giving today. So it will be all relevant to today's video. Now, after that, let's move on now to verse 27. So, again, I'll go back and read what verse 27 says. So God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So that's verse 27. So this describes the relationship that between man and the rest of creation. So it's a way of telling us how to behave and to serve God. There's a lot more to that verse than meets the eye. And so we have to consider that man was made from the elements of the earth, of the world, and also God created man with his own hands and breathed his divine spirit in to man, which it sets man apart from the rest of creation. So this was God's pinnacle. This was God's overall intention, and that soul, that divine spirit of God is within each of us human beings, is part of mankind. So you can see how significant we all are as individual human beings, that we all are part of God's plan and part of God's creation, and he has a purpose for us. There is something that we created that we must do. So I'm going to read the biblical reference to this now. So verse 27 says, so God created, just as man is unique, so the manner of his creation was unique and exalted. Throughout the chapter, God brought all things into being with an utterance. Just remember that. But he created man with his own hands. Remember, he'd say, let there be, and it would be. But with man, he physically, he partook. It was a focused creation by God. In his image, in the image of God, among all living creatures, man alone is endowed, like his creator, with morality, reason, and free will. He can know and love God and can hold spiritual communion with him, and man alone can guide his actions through reason. It is in this sense that the Torah describes man as having been created in God's image and likeness. Now, it goes on, talks about male and female. Although Eve was created later, she and Adam were created on the same day. Although all living creatures were created male and female, this fact is specified only in the case of the human beings, to stress that both sexes were created by God in his likeness. Also, going to just ponder on a little explanation here. I'm just going to try and find it. Oh yes, this is rather beautiful. This is also in the Torah anthology, which is referenced in the notes from today. And this is on page 113, but I just thought I would read this. The unborn child. So bear in mind that God expects us to procreate, to inhabit the world. And I want you to focus on the fact that that creation of a child and the birth of a child and the rearing of a child, that is a partnership with God. And it's not to be taken lightly. It's a divine partnership. So I'm going to read this second layer. The unborn child is told, the unborn child this is, you must realise that God is pure. His servants are pure, and the soul that he gave you is pure. If you keep it pure, all good and well, but if you defile your soul, it will be taken from you. 3 partners partake in your creation: God, your father, and your mother. Your father and mother provided you with the body, but it was still dead. It could neither speak, walk, nor hear. Then God provided it with a divine soul, giving your face expression and providing you with the power to see, hear, speak, and move. He also gave you wisdom and understanding. When the time comes for a person to die, the situation is like a partnership which is dissolved, where each one takes back his portion. Here too, God takes back his portion, the soul, and leaves the body, the portion of the mother and father. That's one of the best explanations I've ever come across in terms of breaking it down into how we can understand that. It's also told that the unborn baby, when it's still in the fetus, has knowledge that's been imparted to it through the divine. But at the point of their birth, that knowledge is like they can't remember it. However, it's a bit like an indelible mark on them. They're born with that ability to be wise, to be righteous, to be of service to God. It's a DNA trait. It's part of their spirit, part of their soul. So I thought that was a good explanation. All right. So we've now covered verse 27. Verse 26 rather. We've now covered verse 27. I'm getting a bit confused here. So now we're going to move on to verse 28. And verse 28 in Tanakh says, or in the Torah, and God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every living thing that moves on the earth. Okay, so let's see what the biblical commentary enlightens us with here in verse 28. It says, "Be fruitful and multiply in accordance with the divine wish. The world is to be inhabited." And I mentioned that before. "One who neglects this has abrogated a positive commandment, incurring great punishment, because he thereby demonstrates that he does not wish to comply with the divine will to populate the world." Now, also there's a continuation on from this, and I won't spend too much time on it, but you can see here where it is a divine will that a man and a woman come together to create a child, a family unit, and to propagate the world. So he's not saying a man, or a woman and a woman, or a man and an animal, or a woman and an animal. He's saying a man and a woman, a male and a female. And that gets alluded to later down the track in this series, but I won't spend time just at this point on that. So we have a very clear guideline there. And also that, in keeping with the passage I read from the Torah anthology, Genesis 1, gives us some further explanations. And so we are expected to inhabit the earth. We're not expected to just not produce another generation. We are supposed to continue with that. So we now come over to the closing two verses, which are 29 and 30. Now, I am going to I'll read the two verses because the commentaries sort of overlap. So I'll read that as a package, so to speak. So verses now 29 to 30, Torah says, "God said, Behold, I have given you all herbage yielding seed that is on the face of the entire earth, and every tree that has seed yielding fruit, it shall be yours for food. And to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth within which there is a living soul, every green herb is for food." And so it was. So there we go. We've read those two verses. So let's see what the biblical commentary says about this, and I will read them. The biblical commentary for 29 and 30 is as follows. Most commentators group these verses together. "It shall be yours for food, and to every beast of the earth," indicating that man and beast shared the same herbal diet. At this time, man was forbidden to kill animals for food. Such permission was only granted to Noah after the flood. And that is a whole nother series and talk. But so there is opinion that, for instance, if an animal had died, that Adam and Eve may be able to eat that flesh or use those skins or hides for garments or tools. But they were not allowed to specifically kill an animal for the purpose of eating. But after the flood, yes, man was granted permission to eat meat because it was a whole new world, and man was going to start needing protein and elements and minerals and things that they probably had not had a need for before the flood. So that is really the essence of those four verses. Now, it is important that we understand those layers that we have discussed, and that gives you that foundation platform. So in your mind now, you've looked at a few different angles of it and explanations. So you've got a concrete basis now with those four verses. And as we go on, also remember, this is just a little reminder, that how it was in Gan Eden, or the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, that is how our future, the Messianic age, is going to be. That's what we're looking forward to. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we progress along. And please God, this time arrives soon, that Mashiach will be revealed. So again, I just want to summarize by saying that these biblical verses and commentaries are sort of like our first layer of fundamental understanding, and that's before you can go onto other layers. And I gave you a little taste of that when I read from the Torah Anthology, which again is referenced as an additional explanation, which I felt was appropriate to pass on. So we can't grasp all those additional layers until we have a firm foundation. Just like a builder needs to make a foundation to build a shed or whatever, you need to have a basic foundation as a Gentile. And that first layer is the basic foundation. That's what you're going to build on. So you've got to have a good understanding of that. I would urge you to not forget to go to the website, which is in the description below, and certainly access the document page. You're more than welcome to use those documents that I put up there. They're just a collection of notes and references that I've put together that may assist you with your following this series. And once again, thank you very much for watching the first video in the Genesis series. I look forward each week now to putting out the each video next in the series. And please subscribe to the channel, because there may be an occasion when I put an extra video up through the week which may have relevance to what we're discussing in this series. So please subscribe. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to do that. And until next week, please take care and God bless.